Welcome everybody to the Bangers and Classics podcast, which struggles on for another week with all sorts of engine trouble, piloted by me, James Rupper, and him, David Malloy. And has David been under a car or anything this week?
No. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a pilot. I'm more of a sort of stowaway, James, as you know.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
I would say so. Yeah. No, I haven't been under any cars this week.
No.
I did go and have a look at the EV progress being made on it,
Oh, goodness
and
me.
it looked great. It looked the best I've ever seen it, even with some of the glazing out of it.
Yeah.
So that boosted my mood somewhat, shall we say?
Excellent.
But I have to say, I've not seen a single classic car this week. There
You
was
haven't?
one. It was in a shopping centre car park, and I just couldn't be bothered going to look. It was either a Morgan or a facsimile of one, and I thought, nah, just couldn't find the enthusiasm to go and look at
Couldn't
it.
be bothered.
No, sorry, folks, that's disgraceful. But it was one of those sort of days where it's like, nah, I just want to go home.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. But yeah, I don't think it was a Moggy anyway. I think it was something masquerading as that sort of car. Probably modern underneath it, I have to say. Panther did cars like that, of course, James, didn't they?
They did, and wasn't there? It was called a Malvern kit car. Does that sound familiar? It
I
does.
don't know, because that's when Morgan was made, or is made.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, there have been various ones over the years, aped that sort of style. Obviously, Morgan carry it off best because really, it's not a pastiche with them. That is contemporary product.
No, well, the one I'm thinking of, which I think is a Malvern. I don't have my kit car book to hand, but I think it was full Cortina based and plastic on top. But
Right.
I don't think it was half bad. I think had a fair following in the 80s and 90s.
All right. I mean, you've got more car books than, well, basically anybody else in the world, James, let's
Well, it's
face it.
very nice of you to say that, David.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And I did have a clear out a few years ago as well. Strangely enough, I had so many books, I had to make some space. But I've still got an alarming amount of them. I'm currently looking at the Observer's Book of Commercial Vehicles, which is
Oh, good God.
incredibly entertaining. Yeah,
We were brought up in great times when you could buy books like that. And you'd go into
absolutely.
W.H. Smith, so up here would be John Menzies. Some people call it John Mingus, but I'm calling it John Menzies, which is the same type of shop as W.H. Smith. You go
Yeah.
in, and of course, it would be wall to wall interesting books. There'd be lots of books about cars, the Observer books sort of front and centre. It was great, but we didn't appreciate what we had, I don't think.
No, probably not. No, it
No.
was it was still good fun. And yeah, I mean, to think somebody would buy a book with lorries in it, but we obviously did because it was just endlessly fascinating because
Yeah,
you would acquire more knowledge about obscure things, which
yeah.
may come in handy one day.
My uncle collects model lorries for some reason. He never drove them, anything
No,
like that. He did work in the the motor trade,
yeah,
but that's it. I mean, I don't know where it comes from, but he collects them. He's got a vast collection of lorries and boxes that just sit there in boxes.
yeah.
No idea why. Anyway, shall we move on to that?
Well, there's all sorts of. Well, I don't know. I mean, if you're interested in what I've seen,
Oh,
either
oh
you
God,
are or
yeah.
you're not, David. I can hardly tell
Well,
sometimes, especially as you've let yourself down. You let the listeners down by not bothering to go
yeah,
and see
yeah.
if it was a Morgan. Maybe I should fill in.
Well, exactly. Shrugging aside my own indifference, I think you should go ahead.
Well, I've seen bangers, David, and that included a Proton Jumbuck, strangely enough, being used as a builder's pickup, which
I was
was
going to
quite interesting.
I thought you were going to say it's a skip.
Well, no, actually, it was being it wasn't in bad condition. It was being driven with some enthusiasm with stuff in the back, so all more power to that. And strangely enough, I was thinking the other day, I haven't seen many VW Polo bread vans, and in the course of a day, I saw two.
Oh,
Quite incredibly, I saw a really early one, round headlight. Mrs. Bangonomics used to have one as a company car many years ago, and that was actually a really good little motor. And so, yeah, so it was a red one that had been sort of scorched pink. And then later on in the day, unbelievably, I saw a later one with the rectangular headlamps.
right,
So one definitely from the 80s and one definitely from the very early 90s.
right.
And so that sort of made my day really to see two of those. I mean, in a way they're bangers and in a way they're classics. But I was very impressed with that. The other thing is, David, a man got in contact with me, and he's to do with Innocenti's and Mokes, strangely enough.
Mm.
So he was showing me a picture of his Innocenti, which was an 81 example, which is very, very nice. But
That's
he,
the hatchback.
yes, yeah,
Right,
absolutely. So
it's
yeah,
effectively that's the Data Massa one, or Data Massa owned Innocenti.
yeah, that's right. But he's very into it. He joined, joined all the clubs and all the stuff, and he's actually I think he's like the representative for the Moke Owners Club, which we'll come to in a moment. But yeah,
I know where this is
exactly.
going. I
So
know where
yeah,
this is
it
going.
could go somewhere. But
Yeah.
what he sent me, because I said, we are in, we're a very select group, people who own Innocenti Minis, the square ones, and he said yes, and he sent me an Excel file, which was obviously tremendously exciting if you like Excel files. And initially I thought, oh, there's about 10, 15 cars there. And then you read the descriptions. These are all the cars that he could account for, and most of them were scrapped or lost or had gone elsewhere. So actually, the actual number, which nobody actually really knows, because even if you go on the DVLA website, it has no idea what
Mm,
an Innocenti is. I don't know. There's maybe three, four, five.
yeah.
I mean, I had no idea it was such a small amount of cars. But there you go.
Well, if you read the My Lesser Spotted Classics book,
Oh, really?
yeah, I do mention that there's very few. I
There are
can.
very few.
There are
Yes.
very, very few.
But this very nice chap who got in touch about his Innocenti, he does have lots of nice other cars, and which is great. But yes, including a Moke. But I
Oh,
have asked him the question what he thinks about the revived Moke. He hasn't got back to me because I only asked him yesterday. So I was looking forward to that because apparently the Moke is coming back. I don't know if you're aware of that, David.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
A certain person made me aware of that recently.
really.
Can't think whom. But before we get to the Moat, James,
All right. Yeah.
Innocenti appears
Mm.
in the lyrics of a song by which very famous band of the late 70s and 80s?
Uh, would that be the Motors, David? After
No, it'd be
after
Dire
they did
Straits.
oh really? They did, did they?
Yes, it's Once Upon a Time in the West. Who's protecting the Innocenti?
All right.
Yeah, it's not talking about the car, obviously, but I just thought I'd
Mm,
chuck that
well, that's a
in.
shame.
But they are really nice cars.
Mm,
I like them. I'm not a big fan of the normal Mini. Never really took to it. But the Innocenti, ever since I
mm.
first saw it as a kid, I thought, I like that. So there you go.
Well, there's nothing wrong with minis, David, and obviously that's one of your blind alleys, one of many automotive blind alleys that you suffer from.
Oh God, lots
Um,
of them. Yeah.
but you'll come round to it, really. I'm sure.
Ooh, let me think about that one. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, you're gonna tell us all about the Moke before it degenerates any further.
Well, no, I mean, people are probably so excited, but yeah, the mini motor's coming back. And then it was odd, really, wasn't it? And then there was another release the other day because it's going to be made in England and everything, and it looks like the last version that sort of came out of Portugal. So it had it's got like a roll cage on it and stuff, which sort of spoils the looks, but we know why it's there so that you don't lose your head.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, we got another one the other day, and it sort of said from 2022 it's going to be electric, and that's all it's going to be. So it was very disappointing, really. I mean, in some ways, it is correct that a small light car should be electric, but it's just like everything in the world is now electric. And also, the starting price is like 30 grand. So it's just, I can't really I can't work up the enthusiasm for it really. It'll just be
Yeah.
another.
It's a
It
shame in a way
is.
because it's an iconic car that's
It
being
is.
brought back, and
Yeah.
we should be celebrating.
Yeah.
And but then again, maybe as you say, James, electric power might be the thing to have.
Mm.
Um, the trouble is, there's not much of a market for the Moke here because we don't get the weather.
We don't know.
But in the south of France, certain parts of Spain, would be an ideal car for
Mm.
a car you just use locally or even in cities. I would say a bit better as a rural car
Mm.
because you've got very little protection for your things in the Moke. Let's face it, if you leave anything in it
No.
at all, when you come back, it ain't going to be there.
No. Exactly.
So yeah, but as a rural car with a moderate range, even I think that'd work okay.
Mm.
You can enjoy the sunshine. That's the main thing about the Moke. It's the feeling of enjoyment, isn't it, of driving it?
No, absolutely, and yeah, you haven't got the encumbrance of the door.
Mm.
So
or much of a roof or anything really.
or roof or anything. But
Yeah.
actually, in a real Mini, the doors are pretty optional half the time. I can see, quite a lot of daylight through my ones. They're sort of fairly optional. I think I'll stick with my Mini, David. I was getting all excited thinking I could go and buy a Moke, and no, I won't be able to do that. But never mind.
Why
We
not
can
buy a
move on to something else. Sorry.
Citroen Miari? Why not buy one of those?
Uh,
Not the E version, the old version.
no, that's right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, but I don't know. Well, there is actually, strangely enough, there is one about 7 miles away from me somewhere. It occasionally pops up on a garage forecourt, and it looks well used, and then it disappears again. But I haven't mentioned it because I haven't seen it for a while. But it is a
Right.
real one.
I like
Um,
that. I do like those.
mm,
I've always liked to Miari for some reason. And you're going to say it's because I like French cars, aren't
because you
you?
like French cars,
Yeah,
David.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
There we go again.
there you go. See the, yeah. I mean,
I take a pounding in this podcast. I really do.
well, I mean, you probably like the Citroen Ami that's come back, haven't you? Which is basically a quadricycle, but there's people getting very excited about it, and there's not really a lot to get excited about. But there you go.
Well, you see, you got that in the Renault Twizy, but they are, to
Mm,
my mind, they are just modern versions of the car that was built in small numbers at Prestwick Airport, the
mm,
SAL Scamp, which I
mm,
think we've talked about before.
yeah.
Um, and it was the same idea.
Mm,
A car with limited performance, limited
mm,
range that would take you and possibly two people from home to, say, the railway station and back again. That was it. It was a very limited use car, very
that's right.
low range car. But from that purpose,
Mm.
for that point, it was ideal. It was perfect for it.
But
Did
then you said Scamp, and there was a kit car Scamp, which you
yeah, it
used
was.
mini front and rear subframes to
Mm.
make a Moke. So there we go. That brings us back to the Moke. Everything leads back to the Moke, David.
But you're not buying.
No, not now. No, not now.
Right. Okay, having taken a long time to establish that James is not in fact buying a Moke,
No, I'm not
we'll
buying one.
take a very quick break before we move on. You're listening to Bangers and Classics, presented by James Ruppert, the man who makes Beau Brummel look like Stig of the Dump, and by David Malloy, who's said to resemble Wurtle Gummidge on a bad hair day. So we are back after that short break. I've got a question for James just now. You're sounding very clear, James. Whereabouts in Europe are you at the moment? You, Ms. Pitt, and the XJS.
Oh, we're in Austria at the moment. We're in some very pretty locations, and yeah,
Right.
it's a lovely, lovely part of the world. I don't know if you've been to Vienna, David, and places like that. It's rammed full of culture,
Yeah, they
which
wouldn't let me in.
they wouldn't let you in. Oh, that's a
No,
shame.
no. But the application got turned down.
Oh no.
There may have been some laughter at my expense as well at the time.
Oh right.
Anyway, this week I have mostly, apart from I didn't see any cars, didn't spend time under cars. I should have said I've been mostly spending my time writing hitchhiking signs.
Oh right.
Trying to spell Transylvania has been a real big problem for me.
Yes,
So I
that's
went
a
through
long
several
word.
bits of wood and quite a lot of paint
Yeah.
because somebody sloped off. I was going to say something else there
Yeah. Yeah.
with the XJS leaving it behind.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you mentioned things that are,
Mm,
well, you're talking about Austria. It's a Teutonic or a Teutonic country.
yeah.
Let's move to Germany and talk about a car from there for this week's Banger Classic, shall we?
Right.
And you're a big German car fan, so this will be right up your alley.
Well, it might be. I don't know.
Well, I think it will be.
It depends on the car, David. I don't
Well,
know.
it's the Volkswagen Scirocco Mark II, not
Right.
the Mark One, the
No.
Mark II. What do you reckon to it, James?
Well, strangely enough, David, it's a classic. And many years ago, when I was writing a book about golfs and related things, I did go to the Carman Gear factory, actually, where
Right,
they made them, and I saw them being made, and I was given a model. Actually, I was given two models because Mrs. Bangonomics was with me at the time, and so I have a scale model of a Mark II Sirocco. And
right.
yeah, they're great cars. I mean, it's a beefed up version of the Mark One. Some would say it's not as pretty. Some would say it's a bit more chunky. But I rather like it. And again, it's one of those that you do not see. It's you struggle to think of the last time that you actually saw one, and it brightens your day when you do. So yeah, it's a Golf GTI but lower.
Hmm.
And
Well, so it's the Mark One Golf GTI because it's based on the Mark One platform.
mm,
Both Scirocco's Mark One and Mark Two are
yeah,
based on the same golf platform. The Mark Two golf platform was used for the Corrado, I believe.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm just amazed, James. I mean, last week
What?
you've got a tale of getting popcorn. And this week, it's getting models given to you.
I absolutely.
Unbelievable.
I've been showered with gifts my whole life, David. But more importantly, what do you think of it?
Oh, I like it. I like it. I've got to be honest. Yeah, I do like it. A friend had a Mark One which got stolen, which again, really nice car, the Mark One. A lot of time for it, and the Mark Two came along, and unlike the Mark One, it wasn't styled by Giugiaro. There's an urban myth that goes around that Giugiaro submitted a styling proposal for the Mark Two that ultimately became the Isuzu Piazza.
Mm.
But although Giugiaro did style the Piazza, it wasn't on the basis of a failed Mark II proposal, a Mark II Scirocco proposal. It was an entirely different car. But yeah, I do like it. A friend of mine, the same friend who had the Mark One, then got a Mark II as a company car, and this was an underpowered one. I think it was at 90 horsepower, and he hated it. And I lived up quite a rough road because I lived out the country for a couple of years in the late 80s, early 90s. And if we were going out, we would take turnabout, using the cars. And if he was picking me up, he would drive up at this horrendously bumpy road at a terrific rate of knots, trying to trying to break the suspension on it, in the hope they'd give him a better one. He never succeeded in doing it. I mean, anyway, eventually he got fed up of both the company and the car, and he left and went freelance and had to buy his own car, which was a real chore, I'm sure. But he bought a Mark II Scirocco Storm, which he did break, unfortunately, because it was a really nice car. Wasn't nice enough for me to want to have over what I had at the time, but I still liked it a very great deal. It's not very roomy in the back, as you usually imagine, but it's not really designed for that. That's not what it's for. It's a comfortable car. It's quite fast. It's sure-footed, and it looks pretty good. So what's not to like about it, James? And you're going to tell me it's very reliable too, apart from the one that he broke.
Yeah, I mean, apart from rust, it's just all the usual golf things,
Yeah,
really. And
yeah,
yeah, it'll just run and run and run, really, if you look after it mechanically. Um,
yeah,
no, there's nothing to worry about them. They don't blow up and stuff. So
yeah. Except his.
yeah, exactly. But
No,
depends how you treat them.
yeah, I can imagine he didn't treat it quite as well as he should have. But that notwithstanding, I have to say it's a classic, and that's the end of the matter as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, fair
We
enough.
can move on. We're both agreed.
Hmm.
Mark II is a classic. It
Yeah,
didn't sell anything like same sort of numbers as the Mark One,
no,
and I think that's because the hot hatch became more of a thing when
it
the
did.
Mark II was current. Yeah,
Yeah,
because obviously the Mark One came out before the Golf GTI.
it did very slightly, didn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a couple of a year or
Mm.
two, yeah. And it took time for the hot hatch market to really heat up, and the Scirocco didn't have that much competition. And later on, of course, you had a lot of hot hatches. You get the Renault 5 Turbo, various other Renaults, Peugeots, and so on and so forth. And the Scirocco found itself in quite a tough market, against cars that were maybe a bit more practical, a bit more roomy, but still, fairly sporty in their appeal. I think that's why it suffered. But the poor old Corrado sold even a fraction of what the Scirocco sold, so it
Yeah.
was diminishing returns all the time. And I mean, the Corrado also was a very fine car, but there we go. So we can move on from tales of woe about Volkswagen and sales, and we'll look at we'll stay in the 70s, shall we, James?
Yes,
I'll go
please.
to the
Yeah.
70s rather.
Mm.
Hmm. And this is about budget motoring. If you were back in the 70s and you wanted to buy a new car, but you didn't have a vast amount of money, and bearing in mind that it was much harder to get a car loan in the 70s, especially on hire purchase fee. Remember, there were certain restrictions on it. You can have a Fiat 126, an FSO Polonaise, or a Renault 4. What would you go for?
A bicycle, wouldn't you? Really, that's what you want. Well, no, obviously, all the cool kids would want a Renault 4, wouldn't they?
Hmm.
All the
Yeah,
people listening.
yeah. My mum had a Fiat 126,
Yeah.
and this thing scared the hell out of us. Yeah, it was like a roller skate with casters in the back. At least her one was. This was probably early 80s, and it was quite terrifying to sit in as a passenger, let alone to drive. I think I did eventually drive it on the private road a couple of times and did not enjoy the experience.
No.
I pity because it was quite a stylish little thing,
Yeah.
but it just wasn't very practical. The rear engine wasn't ideal for it, I have to say. The Polonaise, you're going to
Mm.
love this, James, was styled by
Yeah.
Giugiaro.
You're joking. What was he doing?
Yeah.
What was
He
he
was on his
thinking?
toilet break and somebody said, Styles a car. Well, he scribbled down what became the Polonaise, got his 50 quid fee, and got on with his day, I imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very long running car, and apparently it was quite a safe car. It was quite well built. To give FSO the due, it wasn't a complete clunker. It maybe wasn't as stylish as a car from the West in those days, because obviously it came from Poland, which was then behind the Iron Curtain. But it had quite a long production life, and they sold quite a few. And it gave people some cheap and cheerful motorings. To insult it, I think, would be disrespectful. It was a worthy car, if a limited one, we can call it that, perhaps. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't knock it at all. The
Mm.
Renault 4 is a much older car. It's from early 60s. And I think the boss of Renault at the time called it a blue jeans car. Um, all it really was a more sophisticated 2CV. When you
Yes.
get
Yeah.
right down to it, it
Mm.
had the same appeal. It was designed for slightly rougher roads, comfortable, cheap to run, versatile, and they sold by the hotcake. And they're quite stylish cars, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think of them as a hatchback, though, James. I think they're more of an estate car.
Yeah. I'd agree with you there.
Yeah,
But
I regard the hatchback as a sort of fastback shape, whereas the 4 is more your classic estate car with a squared off rear. That's just my opinion, but I think I would go for the Renault 4. The Fiat 126, cute to look at, terrible to drive, in my opinion. Polonaise is certainly better on the bus, put it that way.
yeah.
But if you could have your choice of them, yeah, then I'd go for the Renault 4.
Right.
Keeping with the subject of cheap cars, this week's challenge, James, did you get the email?
I might have done. We'll find out in a minute.
I mean, I thought you might have some Ingrid research this for you.
Well, I suppose I should have certainly chosen the FSO because Ingrid did hail from Poland. So I
Yes.
could, I could certainly give a vote for that car on the basis of it that it's from her homeland. So
Yes, but didn't you get out of it by swimming a river
she
or something?
certainly did. She did. She swam from east to west Germany to freedom, and well done to her for doing that.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. Yes, well, before we go back to talking about the challenge,
Yeah,
last week we sort of cut this off, but it was a bangers and classic business proposal. I've
yeah.
given it some thought. That is to set up a company whereby you hire a classic car to take you across Europe
Mm,
with your very own personal Hammer horror actress as companion. I
mm.
think that's a winner.
Oh, it is absolutely. Yeah, that would do extremely well, I think.
Right. So that's it. So tune in, listeners, and we'll give you the details of that in a forthcoming episode. You can send a deposit now just to the usual address and as much as you like. Anyway, we'll take a very quick break, I think, before we actually embark upon the challenge. This is Bangers and Classics, the motoring podcast that's been cast adrift by the 21st century. And we're back for the final segment of this week's show, and we're going to kick off with the challenge, which is, and I think James will confirm, is to find a car, any car, so preferably a banger, for less than £500. Only provisos are it must be usable and have at least 2 months MOT. So, James, what did you and your delectable travelling companion find?
Well, scrolling through, went from looking at sort of, you know, very worthy cars, with diesel engines and practical, 4 or 5 doors and things like that. Well-known marks and, really quite dreary stuff. And then fell across a £500 Vauxhall Tigra. It's only a
Oh,
1.4, but that actually, when you look at it, you go, "God, that actually was quite an unusual looking car." It's a bit Dan Dare Pilot of the Future type styling, really.
yeah, not quite what I would
And
describe it as.
well, I would, and I thought that needed some love, and I thought it needed to be, I mean, this one has got a year's MOT, no less. It's had 2 private
Oh,
owners, and it's only done just over 60,000 miles. My sister had one, David, and obviously I had immense amount of time telling her how dreadful it was, but actually, it was a pretty good car, and yeah, so I've gone for the extremely stylish future classic. Hold on to your hats, Vauxhall Tigra for £500.
how many of those are left, I wonder?
There can't be that many, can there? Really?
Yeah.
You would have thought a lot of them would have gone by now, but
I don't remember the last time I saw one.
no, you
I,
don't, do you?
I haven't seen one for ages.
Mm,
I can't say if I'm being honest, I absolutely miss them. It's kind of like the Renault
no,
Wind. I don't miss
yeah.
it either.
Oh,
Yeah.
I did see one of those yesterday. One is parked in a town near to me, and if it's still there, I'll take a picture for you. But
Right, yeah, there used to be
mm,
one at the local railway station every day. Whether that was because it was broken down and didn't
yeah,
move it, or it was a commuter's car, I don't know. But it was there, and of course, I moved away. I have not seen it since. I've not seen any of them since, actually. That was the last one I saw.
oh right,
It must be about 2016. Crikey, that's quite a while. The whole thing was driving me a bit loopy, looking for
mm,
a car. So I thought, what can I do? I'll settle for a Lupo. And I did. Never driven a Lupo, but I have driven its cousin, the Seat Arotha, which was terrible. I hired one on holiday once,
yeah,
and it was absolutely appalling to drive. But I thought, well, the point here is to buy a nice little car that's got some MOT and won't leave you hopefully stranded. Well, hopefully won't leave you stranded at the side of the road. And I came across a 2005 Lupo, which I think was one of the last made. It's got a 1 litre engine, so it's going to be good on fuel.
yeah,
Apparently, it's said to have bags of history, has had a recent service and a cam belt replacement. It's only got a couple of months MOT on it, but I looked at the MOT history, and there's very, very little in there that's adverse. It's really pretty impressive. It's described in the ads. It's unmolested, and it's not a pimped show pony.
mm,
And so he's looking for £500 for the seller. It's been up in the market since August, assuming it's still available. I think that's quite a good buy. It's in Leicestershire, and it's advertised on Car and Classic. Only thing that might put you off is it's a sort of pastel yellow colour, which doesn't bother me, but it
mm,
might bother some. But I think that's actually quite a good little buy. Just from the photographs, I should really add, it looks actually pretty straight. The interior looks pretty good too.
yeah.
Again, for £500, what are you going to get?
No,
Well,
not
I know
very
you're going
much.
to get. You're probably going to get a Rolls Royce or something for £500 with your negotiating skills. They'll
Well, I
probably
don't know about that,
they'll
David.
probably give it to you like the popcorn and model cars. They say, "Oh, it's James Ruppert. Let's give him a Rolls Royce."
I don't think so, David. At the moment, £500 sounds like a very small bill to get a Porsche through an MOT to me at the moment, and
Don't talk to me about
but
Bill's
we'll
boy.
but we'll find that out
Yes,
soon.
well, the EV is considerably more than £500 bill. I
Yeah,
can assure you, but it is looking great. But
good.
yes, so we'll move on from that. But you've obviously plumped for what was it you plumped for again?
Tigra,
Of course, I'm just testing.
Tigra.
Just
There you go.
testing. Yeah, it's a Tigre. What colour was it? You didn't say.
It's like a silvery blue sort of color. I don't know
Oh
about
yeah, yeah, yeah.
colors. I'm a bit colorblind, but yeah,
Right.
it was silvery blue. Quite, not terribly interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, it's got a year's MOT on it. £500. Where'd you see it?
That was on Auto Trader, but it is at a dealer. It is a proper car, and it does have a year's MOT. So
Right, that does sound like a really good buy for
it
someone.
is. I think
Yeah,
so.
I
Yeah.
think two good buys actually. I have to
Mm,
say yours has got the edge because it's got a year's MOT, but I think I'd probably rather have the Lupo personally.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so there we go. So a couple of things left to run through this week. First of all, we've got the Bangers and Classic Guide to Etiquette that we occasionally do,
Mm,
and this week we're going to explain our techniques for dealing with car snobs. I should say in advance that I know a chap who is not only a car snob, he's also a wall snob, in that he tells people, I've got the best damn wall on the street, which is just as awful as it sounds, let me assure you. And my technique for dealing with him is to completely ignore him, and I have done for years. So that's technique number one. If you encounter a car snob, ignore them. Put them out of your life, walk away, get to heck. What about you, James?
I don't go to car shows, David, with my cars. So
Yes, but
that's the
you
best way to avoid someone saying that that piece of trim is incorrect or whatever.
oh
Um,
yes.
I would
They
always
all speak
defer
about that,
to.
yes.
Well, that's right. But I'd always defer to Kenny, who listens to this, who attends lots of car shows on our behalf, and sort of knows the type that we're talking about. But I find that's where you find car snobs. Otherwise, it's just people who think they know something about cars and actually don't, and they really shouldn't say anything at all.
Yeah,
So I get a lot of people telling me what year my Mini is when they're just like decades out. It's just
yeah.
you just think, well, if you don't know, just don't say it. Just say it's a nice Mini, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And
Well, the chap I was telling you about, the wall snob, we'll call him,
yeah,
someone asked him on social media once what his new car was. They seen a picture of it. Now, you might say, for example, oh, it's an Audi 80 or it's a Volkswagen Golf. You might say it's a GTI. He couldn't stop there. He had to give the full 20-word description of it. It was a mocha, walker, choker, whatever you want to call it. It was ridiculous.
Did he have a Chinese wall? Now that was a real car.
No, he didn't.
No, there you
No,
go.
it was something that's a bit closer to your heart, James.
Really?
Afraid so. You've got one of them, but not his is, of course, much later than yours, dear boy. Mine was brand new when I bought it.
Yeah.
It's a modern, but you own a car from that particular mark. I'm not going to identify him by saying what it is.
No, okay.
So don't go to car shows, and if you do encounter a snob, just ignore them. I had several other suggestions, but in legal advice, I'm not allowed to mention them. So we'll move swiftly on. And the last part we want to do today is the 21st century equivalent of the suitcase test. James and I are old enough to remember when magazines, as we explained before in the podcast, had the suitcase test. To measure how much boot space you had, they would use the number of suitcases. And numbered suitcases, in fact, all made by, I think, Revelation, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
At one time, anyway. But that's gone, and I don't imagine it's going to return.
Well, we would bring it back, David, like a shot, wouldn't we?
So, we would, yeah. That's it, yes.
We might have to.
Well, we might have to. I mean, being that it's probably not going to be allowed to return unless we were able to bring it back, what do you think should replace it? And I'll throw that open to the listeners as well. What would you like to see road testers do? It seems nowadays they bang on, as they always have, about the quality of plastics, which is absolutely pointless, but we can ignore that. What would I see road testers do, a road test do that is useful? What information would you find useful and practical? Because that's what a road test really should be all about. So, James, what do you reckon?
Well, pretty much, I have no idea, because the only thing that I could think of was the expanding foam test, where you actually take a can of expanding foam and spray it into areas. You could find out how much space you have around the wheels with that to see if it takes one can or two. I can think of daft things, because like you, I'm completely obsessed by the luggage test, really, because that just says it and does it all for me. But I know people get obsessed about how much space there is around wheels and wheel arches and things. And so I thought, you could use expanding foam for that.
I thought you meant the steering wheel for a second.
No.
What was he doing?
No, it's builders expanding foam. That's what I'd stick behind it.
Right. I would just go along something of proper real world tests as opposed to stage tests. Basically, get a car, every type of car you drive at the same route, roughly the same time of day, and a mixture of roads. You can gauge from that, for starters, fuel consumption, whether it's petrol, electric, hybrid, whatever. Gauge its real world range. The final part of the test, obviously, you'd have to bring it off roads and onto one of the private test tracks, simply because you're going to run out of fuel. You're going to drive this car until there's no fuel left, but you do it in such a way that it replicates real world driving, and indeed includes real world driving, because that would tell people really what they want to know. Because you'll get people saying, it'll do up to 400 miles. Well, yeah, up to 400 miles could mean 10 miles, it could mean 50 miles, it could mean 300 miles or 399, because they're all up to 400. So let's find out what it really means. That's my suggestion. Just trying to be sensible for once. I mean, we could do it with a sumo wrestler on top as well, just to make it a bit more zany, if you like, James.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of that.
Yeah, that's it. Real world mileage test with a hammer horror actress in the passenger seat and a sumo wrestler on the roof. That's a winner. In fact, I think I'm going to go and patent that test right now.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much for listening to this week's podcast. Hope you're here next week. And indeed, look out for our Halloween special podcast that's coming soon, assuming that I can make my way to Transylvania and James gets there in the XJS without breaking down. I suspect it's already broken down. He's not told me, but I don't know as yet.
No, I haven't broken down yet, David. And at the moment, there's people actually delivering us free pastries from those lovely little shops that they have there. So it's more free stuff for me and Ingrid.